What if I told you that the people who seem the most complete, the most at peace, are often the ones who choose to walk alone? Not because they can't find love, but because they've discovered something most people spend their entire lives searching for. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share might change how you see relationships forever. Look around you. Everyone's chasing the same thing: the perfect partner, the soulmate, the one who completes them. Society has convinced us that being single is a temporary state, a problem that needs fixing. But what if that's completely backwards? What if the most awakened, the most enlightened people throughout history understood something we've forgotten? That being alone isn't loneliness. It's freedom. It's clarity. It's the path to understanding who you really are beneath all the noise and expectations. Today, we're going to explore why staying single might be the most intelligent choice you can make. Here's the thing nobody wants to admit. Most people don't get into relationships because they've found their perfect match. They get into relationships because they're terrified of being alone. Think about it. How many people do you know who jump from one relationship to another without ever taking a breath in between? We live in a world that treats being single like it's a disease. Your family asks when you're going to settle down. Your friends try to set you up on blind dates. Dating apps ping your phone every 5 minutes with potential matches. The entire economy is built around the idea that you need another person to be complete. Valentine's Day, engagement rings, wedding industries worth billions of dollars. All of it screaming the same message: you're not enough on your own. But here's what's really happening. This constant pressure to couple up has created a generation of people who don't know themselves. They've never sat in silence with their own thoughts long enough to figure out what they actually want. They've never had to confront their fears, their insecurities, their patterns, because they've always had someone else to project them onto. And the result? Relationships that are more like emotional life rafts than genuine connections. Two people clinging to each other not out of love, but out of fear. The enlightened person sees through this. They understand that you can't truly love another person until you've learned to be whole on your own. The illusion of completion. Let's start with one of the biggest lies we're told from childhood. The idea that another person can complete you. You've heard it in every romantic movie, every love song, every fairy tale. Two halves become whole. You complete me. But think about what that actually means. If you believe you're incomplete, if you genuinely think you're only half a person without a romantic partner, what does that say about your relationship with yourself? It means you've abandoned yourself. The enlightened person understands something fundamental. You're already complete. You were born complete. You came into this world as a whole being, and nothing outside of you can add to or take away from that fundamental wholeness. When you chase relationships from a place of incompleteness, you're not looking for love. You're looking for a fix. Here's what really happens when two incomplete people get together. They create a relationship based on need, not want. And need is a prison. When you need someone, you become afraid of losing them. That fear makes you controlling, jealous, possessive. You stop being authentic because you're terrified that if they see the real you, they'll leave. So, you perform, you play a role, and the other person? They're doing the exact same thing. So now you've got two actors on a stage, both performing roles they think the other wants to see, and neither one knows who the other actually is. That's not intimacy. That's a mutual delusion. The person who chooses to stay single has broken free from this pattern. They've realized that completion isn't something you find in another person. It's something you discover within yourself. And once you discover it, something amazing happens. You stop needing relationships and start choosing them. When you choose a relationship from a place of wholeness, You're not looking for someone to fill a void. You're looking for someone to share your abundance with. You're not afraid of being alone because you've learned that being alone and being lonely are two completely different things. The enlightened person has learned to enjoy their own company so much that they're incredibly selective about who they let into their space. They understand that their peace, their clarity, their sense of self is too valuable to compromise for someone who doesn't enhance it. The freedom to become who you really are. Now let's talk about identity. Who are you? Not who you think you should be. Not who your parents wanted you to be. Who are you really at your core when all the layers of conditioning are stripped away? Most people never answer that question because they never give themselves the space to ask it. They go from their parents' house to their partner's house, from one set of expectations to another, and they never stop to figure out what they actually want. You see this all the time. Someone gets into a relationship and suddenly they're into rock climbing because their partner is into rock climbing. They start listening to different music, watching different shows. Even their opinions start to shift and morph to match their partner's worldview. And they tell themselves this is compromise, but really it's erasure. The enlightened person refuses to erase themselves. They understand that the journey of life is about becoming more yourself, not less. It's about discovering your unique expression, your unique perspective, your unique contribution to the world. And that requires solitude. When you're constantly in relationships, especially back-to-back relationships, you never get that time. You're always adjusting yourself to fit someone else's shape. And when compromise means abandoning core parts of yourself, when it means silencing your own voice to keep the peace, that's not compromise. That's self-betrayal. Staying single gives you the freedom to explore yourself without interference. You can pursue whatever interests you without having to justify them to anyone. You can change your mind 1,000 times without disappointing someone who thought you were someone else. Think about the greatest artists, thinkers, philosophers, innovators throughout history. So many of them spent significant portions of their lives single, not because they couldn't find partners, but because they were devoted to something that required complete focus. The single person has the luxury of following their curiosity wherever it leads. If they want to spend 3 months learning to play the piano at 2 in the morning, they can. If they want to radically change careers, move to another country, or completely reinvent themselves, the only person they have to consider is themselves. Because here's the truth, you can't grow into who you're meant to be while you're trying to be who someone else needs you to be. The enlightened person chooses to negotiate with themselves first, to get clear on who they are, what they value, what they want from life, the clarity that comes from silence. We live in the noisiest time in human history. Not just physical noise, though there's plenty of that, but mental noise, emotional noise, digital noise, and relationships, as beautiful as they can be, add another layer to that noise. When you're in a relationship, there's always someone else's emotional state to consider. Their bad day at work, their anxiety about the future, their need for attention or space or reassurance. And if you're a caring person, you take that on. You absorb it. But here's what happens in that process. You lose touch with your own inner voice, that quiet knowing that guides you when everything else falls away. The enlightened person understands that this inner voice is the most valuable thing you possess. It's your compass, your truth, and that voice is quiet. It doesn't shout, it doesn't compete for attention. It whispers, and you can only hear it in silence. Being single gives you access to that silence. The ability to sit with yourself without distraction, without someone else's energy affecting yours, without the constant negotiation of moods and needs and wants. In that silence, you start to hear things you've been ignoring. Maybe you realize you hate your job. Maybe you recognize patterns in your behavior that have been holding you back. Maybe you discover dreams you buried because they didn't fit the life someone else wanted you to live. This silence is where transformation happens. This is where you shed the layers of conditioning, the false beliefs, the borrowed opinions. This is where you meet yourself, maybe for the first time. The enlightened person knows they need that inward time. They need to regularly check in with themselves to make sure they haven't drifted from their center. And staying single makes that process so much simpler. There's no one to explain yourself to. No one to worry about when you need to withdraw for a few days to process something. You can move through your inner world at your own pace, diving as deep as you need to go, and what emerges from that silence is remarkable. Clarity about what actually matters to you. Understanding of your own patterns and triggers. Peace with your own company. And ultimately a kind of inner strength that doesn't depend on external validation or approval. The power of self-sufficiency. Let's talk about something uncomfortable. Dependency. Most relationships have an element of dependency built into them. Emotional dependency, financial dependency, social dependency. People stay in relationships not because they genuinely choose them every day, but because they become dependent on what the relationship provides. The enlightened person refuses to be caged. They understand that real freedom comes from self-sufficiency, not the toxic kind, where you refuse all help and pretend you don't need anyone, but the empowering kind where you know you can meet your own needs, emotionally and practically. When you're truly self-sufficient, relationships become optional. And when something is optional, when you're choosing it freely rather than needing it, it becomes so much more valuable. Building self-sufficiency requires time alone. You have to learn how to comfort yourself when you're sad instead of calling someone to make you feel better. You have to learn how to celebrate your wins without needing external validation. You have to learn how to make decisions based on your own values. All of these skills are harder to develop when you're in a relationship. Because when you're in a relationship, there's always the easy option of outsourcing your emotional regulation to your partner. The person who stays single and focuses on building self-sufficiency develops something remarkable. They become their own source of stability. They learn that they can handle whatever life throws at them because they've proven it to themselves over and over. When you're self-sufficient, you also become incredibly discerning. You don't tolerate relationships that drain you or diminish you because you know what it feels like to be at peace on your own. You understand that being alone in peace is better than being together in chaos. And maybe most importantly, self-sufficiency gives you the power to leave. When you know you can take care of yourself, you're free to stay in the relationship because you want to, not because you have to. The choice that changes everything. So here we are. We've explored why enlightened people often choose to stay single, not because they're bitter or damaged or incapable of love, but because they understand something most people don't. That the relationship you have with yourself is the foundation for everything else in your life. When that relationship is strong, when you've learned to be whole on your own, you stop needing relationships to feel okay. You stop using other people as emotional crutches. You stop seeking external validation for your worth. And from that place, something beautiful becomes possible. You can choose relationships consciously, not from fear or loneliness or social pressure, but from genuine desire. But here's the thing, that kind of conscious choice requires you to first spend time alone, real time. Not the kind of alone where you're constantly texting people or scrolling social media, but the kind of alone where you sit with yourself, face yourself, learn yourself. Most people are terrified of that. They've been running from themselves for so long that the idea of actually stopping and looking inward feels overwhelming. The enlightened person doesn't run from these questions. They run toward them, because they understand that freedom is on the other side. Freedom from the need for approval. Freedom from the fear of being alone. Now, does this mean everyone should stay single forever? Of course not. It means that if you choose to be in a relationship, make sure you're choosing it from the right place. Make sure you've done the work of getting to know yourself first. Because the truth is, the best relationships happen between two people who don't need each other but choose each other anyway. Two people who are complete on their own but decide that sharing their completeness creates something even more beautiful. But you can't skip the solitude part. You can't skip the self-discovery. And in a world that's constantly pushing you toward relationships, staying single long enough to do that work is a radical act. The enlightened person makes this choice consciously. They might stay single for months, years, or even their entire life, not because they're avoiding intimacy, but because they found something more valuable. They found themselves, and maybe that's the ultimate wisdom here. Life isn't about finding the right person, it's about becoming the right person. It's about developing such a deep, loving relationship with yourself that whether you're single or partnered becomes almost irrelevant. So if you're single right now, don't let anyone make you feel like something's wrong with you. Use this time. Use it to discover who you are beneath all the expectations. Use it to build self-sufficiency, cultivate inner peace, and develop clarity about what you actually want from life. The path of the enlightened person isn't the easy path. It's much easier to follow the crowd, to couple up because everyone else is doing it. But easy isn't the same as right. And the people who truly understand life know that the relationship with yourself is the only one that lasts forever. Everything else is temporary. Partners come and go, but you're stuck with yourself until the day you die. And the quality of that relationship determines the quality of your entire life. So maybe the smartest thing you can do is stop looking outside yourself for completion and start looking within. Stop chasing relationships to fill a void and start realizing there's no void to fill. Because in the end, the enlightened person knows this one simple truth: you can't truly share your life with someone else until you've fully claimed it for yourself.